Welcome back to the news review. I am with the Member of Parliament for Chuka Igamba Ng'ombe, Mheshimiwa Njuki, who wants to be Governor Tharaka Nithi. I am with the Deputy Governor Nairobi, Jonathan Mweke, and of course Professor John Lonyangapuo, Senator West Pokot, and aspiring governor for that region. Remember, the bigger picture today in the last segment of this show will be looking at the ballot agenda. Which way for Rift Valley? We have just about 6 or 7 stories in the dailies that are dwelling around the politics in the Rift Valley. But before we get there, the Standard has a story on the front page. It's a special report that extends to page 2 and 3, and it's about the fate of house help or domestic servants, if you like to call them so. Now, a judge yesterday made a ruling. The Employment and Labor Relations Court is now enforcing provisions of the Employment Act 2007, which requires that termination of employment must be through issuance of a 1-month notice, notification to the labor union or office, and payment of all accrued leave days and severance pay. This is according to Justice Nelson Abuoda, who made the award last week following a case that was filed by one Elizabeth Adhiambo after he found that she was wrongfully dismissed by her employer, Dr. Shilan Vora. From the front page, gentlemen, now if you are accused or charged for sexual harassment towards your house help, you'll be charged as much as 1.2 million shillings. Now, 329,000 shillings is the amount that is charged for dismissal of a worker over the phone. That business of you are fired is no longer applicable. There are other charges that are meted out, but generally it's about the fate of domestic workers. Professor?
I haven't read the full story, but it looks like for a case to reach that level, the house help, that lady must have been completely mistreated, and it's not only dismissal, but it was more than that. And it's very rare now. I mean, of course, what I know is it's a bit rare, and unless we are saying it is rampant. Two, the law that governs that, as you have just said, the 2007, we need that law really known by very many people, because it looks like families that engage house help don't know that law exists, and if it does, the consequences normally must be known. And lastly, house help normally come, there is no pool of employment bureau where you go and get them from. These are people you may know from your background, or you are given.
No, these days they are pools, they are bureaus.
Okay, maybe they are there, and they are only in Nairobi. But where the rural area where I come from, most people operate on faith. We know one another, and so on. But those kind of small malpractice exist, but we need to curtail some of those misbehaviors by having a law that governs how people work.
How is this going to affect the industry, domestic workers?
If you allow me, Charles, just before I respond to that, I just wanted to respond to my friend the MP.
No, we will. But, let's just do that, because that's very important for us on a political year, because we don't want no, we will.
2007 to happen again. Domestic workers really are just that, domestic workers. They are workers like you, they are workers like me, and they need to be treated like workers. Labor laws have to be followed, and they need to enjoy privilege that any other worker in this country enjoys. They are not aliens. They are not different from any other worker really in this country. So yes, they need to be first paid at the minimum wage of this country. We know there's been cases of underpaying domestic workers. Number two, they should enjoy protection that other employees or workers enjoy. Protection from sexual harassment, protection from violence, protection from wrongful dismissal, and so on and so forth. So the judge in this case, I think, has sent a good precedence. It should send a message to the industry, if you call it, that you really need to treat your domestic helper like a normal worker. Otherwise, there's consequences to it.
Mheshimiwa Muthoni Njuki.
You know, the domestic workers, as they are so often called, is one area where we have very little civic education and awareness in exactly what are their rights. And I'm happy this is happening, because it is shedding light into what can really happen if you don't treat them well. Unfortunately, this is one area where we do not have a lot of bureaucracy and decorum, because the environment at home depends on the effective communication between the employee and the employer. You know, it's not like in the workplace where we have
code of conduct,
and then these domestic workers have a lot of bosses around the house, your children, and then you also have relatives who live there. And you know, that is a place where emotions are due sometimes to escalate without any due warning. And therefore, there should really be a guideline into how they guiding their employment, because it is one place where you can sack somebody from having emotions without benefit of intellect, just out of an incident. And that is why really it's important to protect them. You might even come home and find your son sacked one of them, you know. And that is why really we need that security of tenure, to have something to be able to protect them from this harassment. And therefore, what really happened is critical. On the other hand, that law should not be open to such that the house girls or the domestic workers also disadvantage the employer. You know, where you feel that I'm so protected that my rights supersedes what I can actually be able to be counted as wrong in this house. It should be two-way, so that you know, if you've heard of domestic workers who have been killed their employers, you know, violent to them. So you should also be able to protect the employer in this particular case.
Quite an interesting judgment that needs to be taken in very keenly by all of us who are families. Now, what the law says is that a contract of service can be either written or oral, and the employer is obliged by Employment Act 2007 to keep employment records. The employer is also deemed by court not to have paid salary if they fail to produce a receipt that shows that they paid a salary. Now, an employee is entitled to payment of salary or wages that is not below the statutory minimum wage, house allowance, or alternative appropriate accommodation. And termination of employment through issuance of 1 month notice is mandatory, and notification to the labor union or any other relevant office is due upon payment of all accrued leave days and severance pay. Just for your sake, for the sake of your family, for the sake of extended interest, it's very important that people get to engage with this report and get to know exactly what more is in there. Now, gentlemen, the Daily Nation has an interesting story about a decision by the national government. Now, the state has set up its own paper, and it has banned advertising in commercial newspapers. The government has banned advertising of its services, including tenders and job applications in commercial media. Accounting officers have been warned in an official memo from the head of public service that if they place adverts in commercial media, they'll be forced to pay for the cost from their own pockets. What does this mean as we approach an election? Jonathan?
Yeah, you know, the government has a budget of almost 2.6 trillion shillings. It's the biggest spender in the city, in this country, and it's what keeps the economy going. Now, the private sector depends heavily on government spend to do business, create jobs, to ensure that the economy goes up, and ensure that livelihood of the citizens of this country is good. A big part of government spending in terms of recurrent budgets is, of course, in advertising. There's tenders, there's jobs, there's notifications, and so on and so forth. Now, if the government cuts all of this, goes and puts it in a publication, probably online,
They've actually set up their own publication. It's called MyGov. It's supposed to be a special supplement that they are asking commercial prints to just slot it as an insert.
So what I'd say is all this advertising that drives the newspapers, probably people will lose a lot of jobs because of the same. Less money will circulate in the economy. Cost of living is going to rise for some of these people. And to me, if you ask me, it's a bad idea. That's one. Number two, the government's core business is providing services and building infrastructure, not running newspapers. So I think the decision that was made by the cabinet was ill-advised, and I'd urge them to rescind it.
One of the reasons they are giving is that they intend to reduce the government spending on media by cutting reliance on newspapers and television stations for advertising and other communications. Mheshimiwa Muthome Njuki, what's your take on this?
I'm with the government on this one, and unfortunately I am. I'm saying unfortunately because with the advent of devolution, the expenditure on print media, especially on advertising, has been very heavy. There's hardly any one day you can open the newspapers and you don't find an ad from the county assembly or the county government, and sometimes they're very big ad, big huge adverts, like the one that costs $1 million and more. And therefore it's no doubt that the government is spending a lot of money on adverts in the print media. But on the other hand, how many of our people read the newspapers? Because basically the mode of communication socially is changing. There is a class of youth, mostly between 18 and about 30 years of age, who hardly look at the newspapers. They don't even watch TV. And therefore the traditional mode of advertising that only targets certain class of people, it may not be very effective, and therefore it may be partially a waste of resources by the government when they advertise in such media. If the government is able to have other forms of communication that can reach people more widely, then that will be seen to be value for money.
But this supplement is a newspaper. It's just it's a print.
It's a print, right?
So what makes it different from
the savings that are made on that can be used on other forms of advertisement? Because in this particular case, the government will not be, when they have their own print, they are not going to be having the kind of expenditure they have on these other conventional newspapers as per se. That is my point.
In a rebuttal, the commercial media, the print, have said that they are not going to have it comfortable taking the insert unless the government pays at the prevailing commercial rate. So that's actually increasing the cost of advertising, because the government will have spent on printing its own publication and pay to insert it in the commercial dailies for circulation.
But I want to believe that there will still be a savings with that mode of insert, because I see people using that to advertise any brand they normally have. It's definitely cheaper. There's also another danger that was creeping in, which may not be unspoken. There was comfort that was developing with the rapport between the managers or the CEOs of county governments and the print media or the other media houses, whereby some even issue silent threats that you do run a bad story on me, then I'm going to pull out my heavy advertising on your newspaper. I am privy to information where at one particular time there was supposed to be information released on grading of ranking of the county government on a particular issue, and it was basically stopped somewhere halfway, because they came up together and said, if you run that, then you're going to reduce our advertising on your newspaper. We were getting to a level whereby this kind of negotiations were somehow becoming compromising on the freedom of the media.
So are you saying the Jubilee government is right in dictating the kind of media the common Mwananchi should consume?
It's not really dictating as per se. It is avoiding over-reliance. You see, when you have dominance,
I want to be able to, as a Kenyan who pays taxes, I want to be able to get information in a media of my choice. Why are you restricting me that I just have to get my government to get adverts from the government?
Unfortunately, what you're not telling this the Mwananchi is that it is their money that is being used extravagantly to run media adverts in the newspapers.
But democracy is not cheap.
But also, Charles, I think it's important to note and tell Mheshimiwa Njuki, he keeps mentioning county governments. This is a national government ban. It does not ban county governments from advertising in media. It is a national government
Mine is just
ban.
an example.
So you keep mentioning county governments. It doesn't apply.
Well, I know you work for the county.
Sorry, John. What's your take about this? Especially the time we are in. We are just a few months shy of an election. And we know the role that the media plays in an election.
The media have an association. You have an association.
Yes.
Yeah. And the government also have the
cabinet.
The cabinet. In such a scenario, what is required is sitting together and coming to tell the media we want to report and work with you in a formalized, in an organized way, if they want. The way they now want to propose, you are saying they want to consolidate and give it to you. How do they want to engage and bring that document to yourself? How much are they going to pay? And in any case, even the printing that they are going to do, they will employ people, they will spend paper and money. And if you are not very careful, normally government can also spend their own money, a lot of money, when it comes to that. So I want to believe that this is an opportunity for the two groups to sit together. But we should not go the way during that time when we had a one-party system, when the government declared that you only must advertise in a government newspaper called Kenya Times.
That was during the KANU system.
Yes, the KANU of that time. Wait a minute. The KANU of that time. The KANU of Ukulonyangabo now is different. If we don't have those, fortunately, our party doesn't change like this house.
The KANU of today is not powerful.
The occupants disappear. So all the wrong numbers went.
He says the KANU of today is not powerful.
What do you mean by power?
Wait a minute.
I now pity this brother of mine. What do you mean by powerfulness? You want to see muscles? No, you don't want to see.
In terms of influence on the economy and on the politics.
If you see me seated here, elected on the KANU ticket, what type of influence do you want to see apart from what my people have now seen, that I am fit and my party is okay?
We have no problem with your party.
Anyway, let's let him finish this.
But you cannot compare the KANU of Moi's days with the KANU of Gideon Moi's days.
There is no Gideon and there is no Moi. Wait a minute. We are in a multi-party democracy. At that time it was one-party system. I don't know how no wonder you are admiring to kill TNA and URP, merge it into some Chipili party, which is now refusing to become what you want.
So Professor, go on with this story.
Let me go on with this story. Let's not move outside. This one, really, it might be harmful to both sides. So personally, I would prefer that an engagement is undertaken where a technical team is involved. And we should not do it in national government alone. If that's the way we want to go, we should also have a representative from every county government. Because in some cases, you see people want to advertise just the way they want.
Do you truly spend so much money on advertising as a county government?
Well, we spend a sizable amount of money. I don't have the figures on hand. But I'll just give you a few examples. For example, now we have been able to, through our regularization exercise, we've been able to get 4,000 title deeds for people in Dandora, in Komarok, in Kayole, and in Ruai, right? People have been waiting for these title deeds since independence. We have now gone, we have gotten them, we need to distribute them. How do we get in touch with all these people? We don't put an advertisement in the newspaper telling them so and so come and collect your title deed.
Now he says you can still do that at a cheaper cost by using the My Government Forum. And
how effective is it? There's no way, and you are right, Charles, there's no way it can be cheaper to go set up your own printing press, print your own publication, and then give it to the commercial newspaper
to circulate.
And the commercial newspaper have already said that you will circulate it at the prevailing rate.
Market rate,
yeah. So they've already said, you can't argue with that, Mheshimiwa. The owner of the newspaper has already given you a rate, so you can't say
that's what I agree.
Yeah? Now let me just conclude my point. I mean, why I'm very passionate about this is because here in Nairobi we are pro-business. Business is what runs, is the engine of this country. And if you want to run any efficient organization, the basic rule usually is you do your core business, what you are good in, and you outsource the rest. Now, here government is supposed to just provide services to the citizens and build infrastructure. Government has no business running a printing firm. So you outsource that to the business.
No wonder Nairobi is getting broke and the garbage is not collected in time. If this is the kind of thinking we have. One, the government of Kenya as a printing,
because I have statistics that we collect all our garbage.
Give it.
Well, Nairobians are listening to you. Government has a printing press. If he does not know, there's a government printing press. It's there. It exists. We print every day. We print the Kenya Gazette, and therefore there's no extra cost in terms of printing. Let them get out of that. When it comes to inserts in the newspapers, it is definitely much cheaper than buying a space in the newspaper. The question is, does the government save the money? And if they do, where does these savings go? Because these are the same guys who want much more money given to the county governments and given to department who wanted to put development, and yet you do not want savings. When you say the government has no business in trying to go into commercial adverts and interfering with them in the same way, in governance, if you have a way you can be able to save your government money to be able to use somewhere else, that's the way to go.
Now we are in a situation where the media owners are saying, look gentlemen, if you want us to have that insert, that pull out in our publications, it has to adhere to our editorial policies. So if you are going to tell us as a government that you have constructed 50,000 kilometers of roads and you can't prove to us, then we will not run that. How does that sit?
There's something we call advertisers, because when you buy a space in the newspaper, what you say there is not responsibility of the newspaper, the media houses per se, because you've just bought that space to advertise what.
But it has to be according to the house rules of that publication. You can't just come and write whatever you want because you've paid and I run it for you.
The better, because you don't expect the government to be telling lies of what they put in the printed insert, and therefore there's no problem about that. They'll bring well-written document which has got all the laid down procedures on how they arrived and what they arrived at, but I can tell you definitely there's going to be a savings on the same. Yes.
As we do the saving, we also need to avoid where a government can easily turn that kind of a newspaper to become a propaganda machine. You know, some of the dictatorial regimes we have seen outside the world, they have their own paper, which they, like in Zimbabwe, you want a story of government only to be seen, or things which you want to be seen and to be noted without evidence. I am saying, when I was PS, I know the government has systems. A circular was being issued by the head of public service to all the accounting officers, right from the top to the bottom, that it has been noted with concern that money is wasted on publications and adverts. You have to justify really why you need to do that before you engage. Suddenly you find there is some kind of reduction, but that has to be a ritual that continues, because the government is so huge you cannot be able to control them. In a way, even if we start this one, if you are not also very careful, because you are the people who are going to advertise, you will end up again billing the same government more than they have been charging. So we need to be responsible. We just give a caution. We need to be responsible on what is supposed to be advertised. The worst ones are governments, because they are in initial stages of wanting to brand themselves, wanting to advertise, showing. Haven't you been the one showing that 2, 3, 4 pages of some small little farm and some cuckoos that have been is a new business that has come. It's a way of advertising, but we need to tell them they are living tough times. We need to reduce them and so on. So it is something that's a caution. You cannot stop it. You cannot allow it to go on. But
now, President Uhuru Kenyatta is quoted some time back as having said that we are spending hundreds of millions of shillings in advertising through the media. Let ministries and other public bodies advertise through the digital platform, that is My Government, which was launched in 2015, and save money for use in other things. Now, My Government is a third attempt by the government to establish a newspaper in Kenya. In 2011, December, the government seized publication of Kenya Today. That is it was a government publication, and this is because there was alleged misappropriation of funds. Before that, like he said, we had Kenya Times, which all government adverts had to go through. So this is not a new thing.
I don't support the government doing a newspaper on their own, which has got to have other sections of the way stories, and because really that is going to be more or less like trying to replicate what can happen in the commercial, and it's not really in the government interest to do a commercial business on print. However, in organizing adverts, the way we do the Kenya Gazette, it needs to even make it easier for people who want to look for jobs, who want to look for tenders, to go straight into that section, you know, and it's so consolidated in one place. It's even more readable because you know why it is. If you want to look for a job in this newspaper today, I have to go from page 1 to the last page for me to be able to get where that advert is, especially for the government. We are not saying that the newspaper will not have business from other sectors in this country, because for the government advert will only purely for government. The other sectors, especially the private sector, they'll still be there.
All right.
Yeah.
Well then, we'll be back after a short commercial break. Remember, in our news review segment today, our crank of the issue is the ballot agenda. Which way Rift Valley? We'll be looking at that and many more when we get back.